Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of convicted killer Brian Cohen. Brian Cohen, at only 19 years old, murdered 69-year-old Warren Barnes. Brian Cohen believed Warren Barnes was homeless and thought that nobody would notice that he was gone. He removed his head and his hands, put them in his car, and attempted to drive it into the Colorado River. Ultimately, that didn't work, so he stored the head and hands in his closet, and they were found by his parents. And before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. Today, we're going to be watching footage from two different sources. First, we're going to be looking at the body cam footage after his parents called police. After that, we're going to be watching his initial interrogation by police. Now, if you want to see this entire story, Law and Crime Network did a full documentary on it, and it was voiced over by me. I have the link in the description below. All right, let's just jump right in.
Okay, so parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
Now look at his body position right here. He's very open. When we're feeling defensive, we oftentimes do something to cover ourselves or soothe ourselves. Right now, he has his thumbs casually in his pockets, body very wide open.
A human head and hands.
Like, for real human head and hands?
Yes.
From?
That fellow who went missing recently.
Which fellow was that?
Now, obviously, you can tell that he has an awkward way of speaking. And clearly, as I said, his body's very open. He's being very open about what he did. There's a human head and hands there. Now, as disturbing as this is to listen to, it is very interesting what we're seeing going on with body language with somebody who is confessing their crimes. He seems to have no anxiety about this. None at all. Oftentimes when people confess crimes or people are caught doing something, they feel anxious about it. They feel nervous. They feel the need to soothe themselves. You're seeing nothing like that from him, at least not at this point. And what that says is that he doesn't feel that much. That's a big part of the problem with people who are able to commit acts like this, is they don't feel much. Now, something that he had said prior to all of this is that he wanted to know what it was like to murder somebody. So the idea that he feels very calm about this, even though he's going to be in trouble for it, so to speak, is not shocking. Let's go back and watch this again, then we'll see what else we see.
Parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Like,
now you heard how slowly and dramatically he said that. He slowly turned his head. This is performative. He's trying to perform here. He's trying to be dramatic. He may truly not understand the gravity of what he did. Doesn't mean he doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. Based on everything I've seen, I think he very much does. But at the same time, this is something that he doesn't take seriously. He clearly knows he's going to get in trouble for it, but he doesn't take it seriously that he took a human life, and he's trying to act dramatic about it. Listen to this part one last time.
A human head and hands.
like, for real human head and hands?
Yes.
From?
That fellow who went missing recently.
Which?
See the awkward way he's saying that? Now, from my understanding, he has a diagnosis of autism historically. I'm not providing that diagnosis. My understanding is he has been diagnosed with that. And sometimes people on the spectrum can have a sort of dramatic way of speaking. Sometimes they have an awkward way of speaking. And that very much is consistent with how he's speaking now. But there is something about the drama of it that I think he's getting swept up in.
Which fellow was that?
Warren Brown.
Warren Brown? When did he go missing?
The night of the 27th.
The night of the 27th? Okay.
You see how much he's leaving his neck exposed. Now, when we're feeling defensive, oftentimes we put our chin down. If you've seen my videos before, you may have heard me talk about that. We put our chin down because it covers our neck. Our neck's a very vulnerable place. He does not feel threatened by police at all. He's trying to show his neck as much as he can. He's trying to show how open he is. He really does not feel any form of threat at this point right now at all.
And how did you end up with him?
I murdered him.
With what?
A knife.
Why would you have done that?
I've always wondered what murder felt like.
Okay. Where did you do that at?
Underneath the bridge.
Which bridge?
The one past
Okay.
near the weird
Okay.
intersection.
Do you have anything on you that's going to cut, poke, hurt, stick me anything without reaching for nothing? Don't reach for nothing.
My phone and my wallet, that's
okay.
it.
Well, I'm going to have you face that way. Put your hands on top of your head for me real quick. I just want to make sure you interlace your fingers.
As you can see, he's listening to directions well. He's capable of understanding what's going on. And I think that's confusing for a lot of people, is how could somebody be so detached and yet attached enough to reality to listen to what he's being told, to follow along with what's going on. And it could be, when you think about neurologically, there's parts of the brain that are underdeveloped for people that can commit acts like this. The part of the brain, the amygdala, for example, is part of the limbic system, which deals with emotions. For some people, that's underdeveloped. For some people, for psychopaths, for example, that tends to be underdeveloped. They just don't feel fear the way the rest of us do. So something like this, he's not going to be anxious and showing all of the nerves that most people would. Even somebody that is admitting to this and wants it to be known that what they've done, they would still typically show more nervousness. So there must be something neurological that allows him to be so calm in this situation, because it's so highly unusual. Because he doesn't seem to be psychotic right now. He doesn't seem to be completely detached from reality. He's able to describe what he did, how he did it, what he did it with, and he's able to follow directions. So in that sense, whether or not he's a psychopath, he doesn't seem psychotic. In other words, he doesn't seem incapable of knowing what's going on around him, incapable of knowing the difference between right and wrong. He's just indifferent.
Kurt, stick me anything without reaching for nothing? Don't reach for nothing.
My phone and my wallet, that's
okay.
it.
Well, I'm going to have you face that way. Put your hands on top of your head for me real quick. I just want to make sure you interlace your fingers for me real quick, all right?
Go ahead. Phone?
Okay. How do you know that?
The fact that the police officer is remaining so calm and matter of fact is great in a situation like this, because it helps somebody like Brian Cohen remain calm. They're going to be reflecting the kind of energy and behavior coming at them.
They told me that was what was in the wallet.
What do you mean that was?
No, Brian, how did you come across this
How'd you
guy?
come across the gentleman?
I was driving,
Uh-huh.
and I saw a strange shape near the railway.
Uh-huh.
So I parked my car and investigated it.
So you saw him putting his hand in his pocket a little bit. There's a little bit of pacifying behavior in that sense, but really, I think that has more to do with the fact that he's awkward. I'm going to guess that he would be just as awkward interacting and talking about anything as this. So we're not seeing behaviors, once again, to calm himself down talking about committing murder. He seems probably to be calming himself down or acting a little awkward just because it's a social interaction, and it's minimally pacifying behaviors at that. Now, if you look at this behavior right here, the hands on the hips, what this does is it lets people know how big you are. Look how much space I'm taking up. Look how important I am. Now, sometimes police officers will do this when they speak to people because it's a way to keep people in line. Unconsciously, we see somebody standing like this. If we see them as intimidating, it makes us less likely to act on doing something. As he's doing this right now, he's feeling important. He's thinking about how big he is. So it makes him feel big and important to have committed the act he's talking about.
I saw a strange shape near the railway.
Uh-huh.
So I parked my car and investigated it,
Okay.
and I found it to be a man sleeping.
Okay. Where's the knife at?
It is in my sunken car. Well, it's in my car.
I had that
Previously
I
sunk.
this is going to be an investigation, and I'll take it from there.
Okay. So, did that happen when you crashed your car? Or is that totally different?
Now, you're seeing him chew on the inside of his mouth a little bit. You saw a little bit of a tongue flick. Now, this starts to get a little bit confusing because when people are being deceptive or when they're lying and they're trying to comfort themselves, sometimes you see this. However, when people get excited, you also see this. This is something we've seen with serial killers, that when they talk about things that they've done, you see that kind of behavior going on with the mouth. You see that kind of tongue flick going on. Watch this again.
Okay. So, did that happen when you crashed your car? Or is that totally different?
That's related, but a different event.
Okay.
So I think that talking about this gets him excited. Talking about what he's done is thrilling. It's exciting for him. There's this sort of Superman pose showing how important he is. He's taking up as much space as he can. So something like this, a situation like this might get him excited, but I don't think he's trying to pacify himself because of any sort of deception, lying, or hiding.
How's it related?
Well, when I killed him, I tried disposing of his body by putting it in the river, but
Okay,
I parked too low in the river. And
Where's the rest of his body at?
Huh?
Where's the rest of the body at?
What parts?
The body, Brian. Where's his body?
Down the river.
Okay. I'm going to have you walk over here. You're going to sit in the back of my...
So as you can see, the arrest went on without incident. Let's go to the interrogation, see if the body language changes there. Now, when the detective is first walking in, I want you to look at his hands. If you look at Brian Cohen's hands right here, he's doing what we call steepling. Now, this is a way to show people that you are an expert. It actually can work pretty well, depending on the situation. For somebody that's 19 years old, you shouldn't do it because people will think you're being arrogant. But what this does is it shows that you believe you're an expert. And In this situation, he's likely sitting like this because he feels smart. He feels powerful. He wants to show people he knows what he's talking about. So the idea that he's sitting like this does give us some idea that the internal feelings, the thoughts that are going on right now are ones that probably are grandiose. It probably makes him feel important and big to be in this situation.
How did you get here?
Now, the initial body language, look at his legs being apart, his hands being apart, his arms sitting on a table. Everything about this suggests that he is actually feeling calm right now. This is not somebody feigning calmness. This is not somebody trying to convince you they're feeling calm. This is someone who genuinely is.
Murdered someone.
Okay. But how did you get to my office?
Well, the police drove here from my mom's house.
Okay. You said you murdered someone.
I did.
Did you know the person?
No.
No?
No.
You hear how quickly he answers these. Oftentimes in interrogations, particularly for people that are trying to deny something, you hear them hesitating, the hem and haw a little bit. He is quick. He is direct. He's telling you exactly what happened. Now, let's go back and watch this body language a little bit more.
Well, the police drove here from my mom's house.
Okay. You said you murdered someone.
So it was interesting. What he's ready to talk about are any details related to the murder. When they asked him how he got here, he did have to think about that. So the police drove me here. That's not something that he's excited and ready to talk about, so he had to think about it for a second, which he pondered. He gave them a response. But the answers that he's ready to give are the ones related to the murder. He is ready to talk about this.
I did.
Did you know the person?
No.
No?
No. I was driving one night. I was in a, shall we say, bad state of mind.
Okay.
I saw a strange shape by the railway tracks, so I investigated and it revealed.
So this goes back to the excitement that I talked about before. If you're watching his legs, you can see they're starting to bounce up and down. He's holding his wrist right now. Now, I talk oftentimes, as I've said before, about pacifying behaviors, calming oneself down because they're being deceptive or they're lying. Right now, he's trying to calm himself down because he's getting excited, and that's very different. Now, the body language actually isn't all that different because you see the energy trying to come out and seeing somebody trying to stop that energy from coming out. But the reason for it, obviously, is very, very different because so far, he's been sitting very still, answering questions very directly. Now he's describing the situation that takes him back there, and that's very exciting to him. So even though he's been calm up to this point, I do think we're starting to see some excited energy coming out. Not nervous energy. Maybe you could describe it as a little nervous, but more excitement.
Bad state of mind.
Okay.
I saw a strange shape by the railway tracks, so I investigated and it revealed to be a homeless person sleeping.
Okay.
I presumed homeless because he was there.
Now, watch his eyebrows right here when he says, I presumed homeless.
Sleeping.
Okay.
I presumed homeless.
So he's providing these details. I presumed homeless. He's letting you know how he came to that conclusion. He wants you to focus on his face. We raise our eyebrows to focus on our face. He wants you to listen to what he has to say because he's wanting to show you how smart he is, how thoughtful he is, how much he's planned all of this. He wants people to know what a detailed thought process he has about all of the things that he did.
Because he was there.
Okay.
So I stabbed him to death,
Okay.
then decapitated his head and hands and arms.
Okay.
I then took the head and put it in my car trunk along with the hands in bags, plastic Ziploc bags. I took it back to my house, cleaned off the knife.
So you heard a big sigh there. You see him bouncing his leg up and down again as he's talking about what he did afterwards. Now, he was staring very intensely at the detective as he was describing what he did. And that's something that can also be exciting to people that are psychopaths. They like telling people gory details and seeing their reactions because even though they don't feel much, they know it's disturbing to other people, and that can be exciting to them.
I took it back to my house, cleaned off the knife, tried to hide the head and hands, removed the trash in my car that was stained in blood. And then I tried sleeping. However, I was quite stupid, shall we say, because I decided that's too much evidence. The body needs to be dumped in the river.
So as he smiled, this goes back to the idea that there's a little bit of performance with all of this.
Sleeping. However, I was quite stupid, shall we say, because I decided that's too much evidence. The body needs to be dumped in the river. So I took the body in the trunk.
Now, you'll also notice that he's leaning back. Now, I talk about sometimes people do that to disengage, so that there's some emotional distance between them, that when people lean in, they want a certain degree of intensity. Now, being somebody that, if I understand correctly, is on the autism spectrum, there is going to be a certain level of discomfort just in general with human interaction. There's a certain awkwardness about it. So it's not surprising that he's not leaning in. Ted Bundy would sometimes lean in. He wanted really to get close to every single interaction he was having. He loved to sort of absorb what the other person was giving off. And he may be that way to an extent, but I think there's also a certain level of awkwardness that he might feel, so that he does have a little bit of feelings, might feel a certain amount of awkwardness that does keep him from doing that. Because otherwise, I think that he really would be leaning into this.
Drove it to the Blue Heron drop-off point and unsuccessfully dumped the body as I parked too low down the ramp. The ramp is mud and dirt, so unless you have four-wheel drive, you're not getting out. And I was able to get out, and my car flooded. I killed him just after 11, February 27th, 2021. And then...
So the level of detail that he's providing, since he's giving up that he did all of this does show how much control is important to him, that he wants to make sure that every detail is precise. He really does seem to be putting forth a lot of effort to make sure he's saying the exact right thing, to make sure that he's giving the correct details.
I dumped the body. I tried to dump the body. I'm trying to remember the time exactly. It was 1 a.m.
Okay.
And yeah.
So that sounds fascinating.
What do you want to know?
You start back at the beginning and go slow and tell me as many details as you can remember.
So, because I'm already going to jail for this 15 years probably.
All right, so now when he said, I'm already going to jail, now you see the body close up for the first time. The reality of what's going on, the excitement might be wearing off just a little bit. So obviously it's too late. No taking this back now. But as he talks about jail, look at his legs and his arms. Immediately he starts closing off. So there's something about the reality of the fact that this is happening. He is going to go to prison and recognizes that is making him close up a little bit. So it shows that he does have some feelings, that it's hard for him to connect with those anxious feelings, but they do exist there sometimes.
Because, I'm already going to jail for this 15 years probably.
I have no idea.
Because
we're at the beginning.
It's murder. I'm going to jail for 20 probably. But, so I figured, why fight it?
Okay. So what's important to me is to learn as much about you and what you did as I can.
And that grabbing the water bottle, that goes to show now we're getting into the pacifying behaviors. Now we're getting into some stuff where he does need to make himself feel a bit calmer. He's been pretty confident so far, feeling a little bit less confident now.
Well,
as many details as you can give me, the better.
I drive a 2007 Ford 500.
Okay.
And I keep a small 18-inch bat in there for self-defense.
Okay.
And a large kitchen knife in the glove box, both for self-defense, because I don't really trust anyone, or really any part of this town. So
then again, he says, I really don't trust anyone, crosses his arms again. I think that's actually true. I think he struggles to trust people because he closed off. His body immediately closed off as soon as he talked about trust. So that reminded him, hey, I don't trust people. I should close myself off right now.
That's why I have both. And let's see. Yeah, it was the night of February 27th. It was a full moon. And I figured I can see so well, why not drive out? And I am in a bad state of mind at that time. I have major depressive disorder, so I am not thinking, shall I say, positively.
Okay.
And I'm cruising around for an hour and a half.
Now you're seeing little bits of anxiety, you're seeing arrogance. There's various things that we are seeing, but the one thing we are not seeing is regret or sadness. A little bit of anxiety, not really seeing fear either. So it's interesting that he's not truly able to connect with any of those things. Not surprisingly, we rarely see that in people that have committed crimes like this, so I wasn't expecting to see that. But there truly is an absence of that. There's no body language that shows that there's anything he's feeling related to any of those kinds of emotions.
So I fill up on gas halfway through, and I'm eventually driving underneath the bridge near the sheriff's office. You know, like how... Can I?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
There's a road underneath, right? Out under the overpass. And I was driving along, and I see a shape here on the railway track. So I'm like, oh, interesting. So I go up, and as I'm looking, I see a large thing wrapped in a canvas.
Now, if I understand right, assuming what I'm about to tell you is correct, I've read that he thought of himself like Ed Kemper. Now, for those of you who know who Edmund Kemper is, he was a serial killer, very well liked, very charming in a very real way. It was very hard for people to look at him and see that he was a killer, but he very much was. He did some truly awful things, but he fancied himself to be like Ed Kemper. So I do wonder if part of why he's doing all this goes back to the idea of performing, being liked by police. I want to show off how smart I am, show off my knowledge, because he comes across very, very different than Ed Kemper does, but I can see how he could be trying to emulate some of that behavior if you know who he is.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife, I put on 3 layers of gloves, because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin, those vinyl gloves, by imprinting your fingerprints through. So I put on 2, 3 on one hand. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas.
Now you see his legs bouncing up and down again. He's not facing the detective anymore. So it could be, see, and this is where it starts to get a little bit trickier with the body language for him. Part of me thinks that it's really just excitement. As he's giving these details again, he's getting excited, which I'm sure is part of it. But also he's faced away from the detective. Once he started talking about jail, being in prison for 15, 20 years, now the reality is setting in. Now he's a little bit less inclined to engage like that. So he's telling him details, obviously in great detail, but he's also not fully facing him. So he's trying to disconnect a little bit. So if you just look at the position of his body and his legs relative to his top half, it's different.
And I stabbed his neck.
Okay.
He was panicking at first in his old man voice. He was in his 50s. I know why I call him an old man. He was saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah!" And I just kept on stabbing his neck. Is it okay if I do a demonstration?
Oh, yeah.
This is him. I was strapped on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat.
See, it was surprisingly easy, barely breaking a sweat. There's a lot of grandiosity going on. He thinks this makes him look powerful. He thinks that this is impressive. So even though he's saying this to the detective, and probably should know better, he may not fully put the pieces together that nobody's going to be impressed by what he did, that people are genuinely disgusted hearing him talk about this. I really don't think that he fully gets that, because to him that would be exciting, it would be impressive. Other people are secretly going to be impressed by this. He doesn't understand that those of us listening to him talk about this are nauseated, hearing him describe it in such incredible detail.
But I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time I was growling and making animalistic noises.
Why were you doing that?
I suppose it was a frenzy.
Okay.
I was so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline and everything. I was just, woo! And I paused and he...
You saw the lip lick afterwards. Even talking about that excitement's making him feel it again.
And I paused and he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I've been wanting to do this for a long time, murder someone." And then I continued. The whole ordeal lasted about a minute and a half.
Okay.
And I stabbed, and when I was finished stabbing him, he took out his last breath, a grunt, and his head was halfway cut off in stabs. All the while, no, actually, after I killed him, I just couldn't stop saying, "Stinky, dirty, dirty, stinky, stinky." I wasn't smelling anything, but...
And why were you saying that?
I don't know.
So the fact that he was saying that, I apologize that you watching this even have to listen to that, because it truly is disgusting hearing him talk about these things. But there is some meaning there, and it goes to show back to that idea of grandiosity, that he's looking down on somebody. There's a lot of anger in all of this. Obviously, when you're committing murder, it's out of anger. Now, he claims that it's just out of curiosity. He wanted to know what it felt like. But there's a tremendous amount of anger about who knows what lying under the surface. So if he is trying to denigrate somebody, if he's trying to talk down to them by saying all of these things to them, if he's choosing someone that he believes is homeless as his victim, it is a way of having immense amounts of power in his mind.
Okay.
And,
But you remember doing it, so.
yeah. I suppose it was just me speaking out my mind at that moment. It was a pouring out of the mind.
Were you worried about, I mean, this looks like it's pretty close to the road and stuff, somebody seeing you or catching you?
It was 11 p.m.,
Okay.
so not many were driving by.
Now you're seeing him lean forward. Now he's trying to engage because he's talking about these details. He's gotten through the most exciting parts to him. So now he's giving more details, and maybe he is feeling more like he wants to connect in this way. So that's why he's leaning forward right now.
Well, it was behind the pillar. So, like, here's the road. It was here. So.
And he's also getting to talk about what he did. And this is so exciting to him. He thinks it makes him so important. He probably feels closer to the detective now because his empathy is so bad. He doesn't understand how revulsed the detective would be by what he was just saying. Because the detective is going to be trying to seem calm, trying to seem engaged, as one should. Because you want to be able to reflect that sort of calmness and have them just talk about things matter-of-factly. And because he's not recoiling when he says these things, I believe that Brian Cohen probably thinks the detective is more interested. I mean, obviously he's interested in getting details, but that he's maybe feels differently about it than he actually does.
So people would only see a brief thing here and here.
So were you worried about them seeing you?
I was worried about one of them stopping. But
What did you think could happen if somebody, well,
if they looked, well, it was quite dark under there, so they wouldn't have seen the guy unless they looked. They would have seen me holding a bloody 12-inch knife, wearing gloves, and wearing a mask to conceal my identity, a face mask.
okay. So you weren't doing it for COVID, you were doing it to hide your face?
Partially. Social distancing.
See, so as the detective points this out, when this would go to trial, that's helping make sure that it's showing how premeditated this was, that every last aspect of what he did was planned, that none of it was, he can't go back and claim, well, I was wearing a mask for COVID if he changes his mind later. So these kinds of details that detectives can get out of people can be very important when it comes to taking something like this to trial, even though it doesn't sound like a big detail or an important one at the time.
Right. Yeah, but no one stopped. And I'm just like, proves the bystander effect.
All right, let's go ahead and stop here. Now, he does go on to provide additional details about what he did with the body parts, but I don't think the body language analysis of that provides anything above and beyond what we have already covered. What we saw was somebody who committed a horrific act that's hard to even process, certainly hard to listen to him talk about it, and incredibly disturbing. But he does it in a way that shows that he really, truly feels very, very little. At times feels excitement, at times feels a little bit anxious. But somebody like this is beyond chilling and absolutely terrifying. Now, this was a little bit different than some of the other things that I cover. Typically, I'm covering trials or what's in the news right now. I'm trying something a little bit different. So if there are other cases like this you want me to take a look at, please let me know in the comments below. And if there are other things in this case you want me to look at, I'd also like to hear about that. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.